The Timberline Trail is a 40-mile scenic loop trail that circumnavigates Mount Hood in Oregon. The trail weaves along ridges and drops down into numerous canyons, accumulating approximately 10,000 feet of elevation gain. As the name suggests, most of the trail is at or above treeline, which provides breathtaking views of the snow-capped mountain and surrounding landscape. We plan to complete the loop in early July, which falls during the early part of the Timberline hiking season. Hiking at this time of year would likely mean that part of the route would still be covered in snow. I had been monitoring the snow on the route using satellite images, and the most recent one taken before the start of our trip showed snow in several areas along the route. On top of that, the region was in the midst of a heat wave with daily highs exceeding 100 degrees. These higher temperatures would lead to increased snow and glacial melt, making the water crossings even more challenging during this early part of the season. We got up that morning at Hood River, had breakfast, and then hit the road to start our adventure. We arrived at the historic Timberline Lodge to start our journey. Joining me on this trip would be my good friend and longtime hiking partner Raptor and Raptor's brother Turtle. We've done some other trips together, so I was looking forward to another adventure with them. Today's route to Ramona Falls was going to be the easiest day since it was just under 10 miles and mostly downhill. This would be a good first day to ease into our adventure. We quickly left behind the busyness that surrounds the lodge and instead entered the more tranquil wilderness area. We came up to the Zigzag Canyon overlook with the Zigzag River far below us. Mount Hood has several of these canyons with glacial moraines forming the sides of the canyon. Glacial moraines are these ridges or mounds of rock and sediment that get left behind by glaciers. The Zigzag River was the first of many river fjords of the trip. This would be my first and last time I would change into my sandals for a crossing. It was just better to cross wearing our shoes to get better footing in the faster flowing water. Just after the crossing, a PCT hiker coming toward us warned us that the upcoming Sandy River crossing was flowing quite swiftly. We got to the Sandy River during the late afternoon. We took our time and scouted the river up and down looking for the safest route across. Raptor went across first and then it was my turn. The flow was strong enough that it began oscillating both of my poles. We all made it across, and then it was less than a mile to our camp near Ramona Falls. The trail brings you right up to Ramona Falls. The waterfall cascaded gracefully over the countless ledges of rock, and the roaring sound was soothing. Settling in that night at camp, we were grateful to be sharing this experience together. Day 2 started with a quick photo in front of Ramona Falls. Then it was time to hit the trail. There are two options out of Ramona Falls. You can either follow the Timberline Trail, which goes along Yoakum Ridge, or you can take the PCT detour. The detour avoids a long blowdown section from the 2020 windstorm along Yoakum Ridge. We decided to follow the Timberline Trail despite the blowdowns since this is considered the more scenic route. It wasn't long before we hit the blowdown section. I didn't do much filming along this section. It involved a lot of going over logs and in some cases going under them without our backpacks. It was slow going through this section. We eventually got through the blowdown section and came upon the Muddy Fork crossing. Looking back, we could see the trio of Yoakum Ridge waterfalls. The falls were really flowing this time of year. What a beautiful scene in front of Mount Hood. We climbed up along Bald Mountain Ridge. We got to a point on the trail where we looked across at the Yoakum Ridge blowdown section. From this vantage point, you could see just how large the blowdown area was. The gale force winds of that storm toppled the trees as if they were matchsticks. The views here of Mount Hood were some of my favorites along the whole route. Mount Hood seemed massive in front of us. My wide-angle lens makes the mountain appear further away than it really was. Raptor and I stopped several times to really appreciate the scene in front of us. Mount Hood, with its glaciers above the green subalpine forests and the rivers and waterfalls flowing down the mountain, was just stunning. We passed the junction with the PCT and began ascending. Soon after, we started getting our first views of another volcano, Mount Adams in Washington. Soon we'd start seeing more of them. We heard from some other hikers that were coming from the opposite direction that the snow section begins near the McNeil Point Trail junction. We found a spot right before the junction that had great views of the three volcanoes to the north, so we decided to set up camp for the evening. After dinner, Raptor and I decided to head up the ridge to catch sunset and to get better views of the volcanoes. We were treated to an amazing sunset with views of Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, and Mount Adams. As a photographer, I've grown to really appreciate the light during sunsets, and there's nothing like sunsets in the wilderness. Today, we were treated to nature's beauty from sunrise to sunset. We awoke to clear skies, another bluebird day. As is usually the case, the first order of the day was to make coffee and take in the view. We were expecting intermittent snow travel today. Some other hikers mentioned that there was a decent amount of snow between McNeil Point and Elk Cove, but not much after that. What we didn't know was whether or not there would be any high-angle sketchy snow crossings. I guess we would find out. One of the things I appreciate most in the wilderness is the quiet. The only sound I hear is birdsong and the sound of running water from a nearby stream. This, along with the green foliage, creates a calming atmosphere. This is why it's important to escape the busyness of our daily lives from time to time and reconnect with nature. We came upon the burn area from the 2011 Dollar Lake fire on the north side of Mount Hood. Most of the burn area is below the Timberline Trail, but we still had some sections where we had to hike through the ghost forest of bleached trees. I stopped to check out one of the remaining stone shelters. The Carn Basin Shelter is one of 6 shelters around the Timberline that were built many years ago to protect against sudden storms. Of the 6, only 3 are left standing: McNeil Point, Carn Basin, and Cooper Spur. The Elliott Branch crossing was in a valley that has regular washouts. The valley has steep walls of loose soil and rock. We had to carefully scramble down on our backsides to the water. We made it safely across Elliott Branch and began the steady climb up to Cloud Cap. We reached the Cloud Cap camp area, but chose to hike a bit further for solitude and to tackle part of tomorrow's climb. What a change! We started the day hiking on snow and ended hiking on sandy soil. We continued hiking until we found a water source, as we were all nearly out of water. We set up camp just beyond the water source and found a nice spot with sandy soil. I couldn't wait to get out of my wet shoes and into my sandals. Our camp had plenty of sun and quickly dried out our wet shoes and socks. We stayed up to catch sunset and then went into our tents to get some rest for the final day on the trail. The route on this final day would take us up to the highest point of the trail at 7,300 feet. Since a lot of the trail today would be above tree line, we decided to get an early start to take advantage of the cooler morning temperature. This area of the trail has huge rock cairns with posts to mark the way. We stopped to take in the view of Elliott Glacier. There is a junction with the Cooper Spur Trail that leads to a better view of the glacier. We continue the climb across the barren cinder slopes, crossing several snowfields along the way. We arrived at a viewpoint that revealed the massive Newton Clark Moraine. This moraine is the largest glacial formation on the mountain. It's 3 miles in length and rises up 1,000 feet above the Glacier River far below. We eventually made our way to Gnarl Ridge. The scene with Mount Hood in front of us and Newton Creek running below us was breathtaking. We were on a high, and the vibrant wildflowers through this section only heightened the experience. After we crossed the snowfield over Clark Creek, we came upon a series of waterfalls. The first was the perfect waterfall shower. We filled up our water bottles and cooled off on this hot day. The other waterfall made us pause as we rounded the corner. The view of the waterfall amongst the wildflowers felt like we were looking at a painting. It was beautiful. We continued the climb up to the Mount Hood Meadows ski area. We crossed our final obstacle, the White River, and began our final ascent up towards Timberline Lodge. I got a little bit ahead of Raptor and Turtle on the climb, so I waited at the top. I wanted to make sure we celebrated the finish together. We were grateful to make it to the lodge safe and sound. The Timberline Trail tested our determination and resilience, yet in return, it rewarded us with breathtaking vistas, a sense of accomplishment, and a bond forged through an incredible experience that we'll never forget.